It says we are live.
Hoo-wah, I'm Nick Cole, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I promised you something very special tonight, so I thought that we would do something very interesting. I am here with my good friend, Walt Robillard, and he is, if you don't know him, he is the chief editor of Galaxy's Edge, which is a company Jason Anspach, my writing partner, and I do. And this is a little side project I've been working on, because if you know me in real life, I am a big Tolkien aficionado, and for about 2 years over on my Facebook page, I've sort of been every Saturday morning doing these like Tolkien devotionals and just kind of diving into the Tolkien text and seeing what we can suck out of it, happy thoughts, good thoughts, how to deal with stuff and everything like that. There's really a lot there. Tolkien was great. Kind of this all arose out of, just my love and appreciation of Tolkien. True Tolkien. We won't talk about anything else here. So I think it's coming up on 2 months ago, I started a new project in which I was going to write my own Lord of the Rings. Okay, cue the Futurama joke right there. But I decided we'd do something a little interesting. If you know the Galaxy's Edge universe, Jason Anspach and I paint pretty close to the line of Star Wars and G.I. Joe there. Maybe we can talk about that after the show if you want to ask me some questions. If you're new to the channel, got to get my voice down to the writer gravitas, whiskey and bourbon.
The whiskey and bourbon.
Whiskey and bourbon, smoke, dry leaves. So I thought I began to tell this story. I've been releasing weekly serials over at my Substack. I am building a new Tolkien Project Substack. So like if you kind of just want the Tolkien stuff and you don't want my other cultural views or talk about writing or anything like that, but to make it just for the Tolkien people, that's probably going to come on come online this week to the next. And then what I will do, or what I have been doing, is I record the chapter. Sometimes there's some guest voices. And I read the chapter, and I try to read it kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien would read it. And I'm playing with the different types of characters that we knew from The Lord of the Rings, the iconic characters, and maybe possibly putting them into some new roles, some familiar roles, playing with some of the races and kind of maybe switching around their power structures or where they stand, their relationships. So what you're about to listen to is the first chapter. And it is purely an homage to J.R.R. Tolkien. It's an ongoing serial that I do every week. And what we thought we'd do this Tuesday evening is we would do a little drawing. Mainly Walt's the drawing. If it was me, it would be stick figures. Walt is an actual artist, and maybe after the podcast, after the chapters we talk, and maybe Walt finishes up the picture, he can talk about his street cred as an artist. I think you'd be very impressed. And he's going. What are you going to draw for us tonight, Walt? And it's going to be probably something from the first chapter, so that you can visualize that.
I'm thinking a one of the littles with maybe a little Malron mixed in, maybe some pipe smoking, maybe a beer. I don't know. I'm the image I'm going to use as like photo reference is ambitious. So we'll see where we take it. But one of the miracles of technology, I can actually share my screen so you guys see what I'm seeing. Whoops. Remove that, and it helps if I share the audio because we want to hear your amazing voice. We do have one hiccup, which for some reason the chat has not activated.
Do I need to do something to activate that chat? Oh, wait, I should turn you down because you're in the background.
Yeah, that might help.
Do I need to do something to activate that chat? Oh, wait, come on. Yeah, these old geezers are trying to get it all figured out. Okay, so how do I activate the chat?
You would have to go into your YouTube studio and do that.
I'm in there. Okay. Would I go into content?
Live stream. So yeah, find the live stream.
I gotta go to that create button, right?
Yes, sir. And this is why we do a show like this, so that we can work out the bugs.
Okay. Why don't I better start right now. Okay, we got that. Streaming process, go. Okay, and then I'm over here, and then analytics, stream health. Do you know where I would activate that chat at? Closed captions. Let's see.
I would have to
Webcam, edit. Hang on. Hang on. Oh, this is so bad.
Right, terrible.
We might just have to do it. Oh, then my computer froze. Hey, thanks.
Oh, good.
Thanks, buddy. Edit.
Let's see.
Cancel. Webcam. Exit stream. Cancel.
So it was probably something we have to take care of once
another time.
Yeah, once the thing is, or we can shut this down and relaunch. But that would anybody who's watching.
You know what, everybody? For this first round, we will figure it out. Enjoy yourself.
And one of the things that that you can do is if you want to interact.
Right.
And so you can hit us up on the Facebook message where you probably found this video.
Yes.
You could do that, or you can go to Twitter. And Nick just happens to be on Twitter. It's one of his favorite places.
That's me.
And it's at Real Nick Cole. And we'll put that up right now. Whoops. Oh, whoops. And like so. And we can go just like this. So you can go on Twitter, at Real Nick Cole, and you can interact with us on Twitter that way.
I think we have 11 people watching right now.
That is fantastic. I love when that happens. So we're gonna kick this off, and I'm gonna start doing some sketching.
All right.
So what I will do is we're gonna share the audio, share my screen, boom, just like so. We have a nice blank piece of paper, and whenever you're ready, I'm gonna kick it off.
Let's do it.
All right. Part 1, Chapter 1, however you want to say it, of the Tolkien Project, featuring Nick Cole narrating.
Forgotten by the great and the Tolkien Project, Chapter 1, The Show of the Telling. Beyond the roads and ways of civilization, toward the south and a little off to the east, there was once an old inn where road-weary travelers, tired and dusty, coming from the south and heading off to the north and the great cities that lay there, would stop to pass an evening a time or two a year, less and less as those years went by, and seldom now in the current much darker days. But the inn was there all the same, and the lands in which it lay, much forgotten by the great and powerful, as they watched their maps from their towers near the wide and spreading sea, and counted the times with an eye toward the shadows of the south. The Wayside Inn was the last friendly place, as it was simply known by the old and road-beaten who still dared travel, and even occasionally it was sometimes marked on those yellowing ancient maps few seemed to possess any longer, as a place of safety where there was fire and the beer from the cellar was cold. And the cakes uncommonly good. But that is saying something about the Littles twice. Both good cake and Littles mean the same thing to anyone who knows a thing or two about either. The Indari, rulers of the great elven kingdom of Indalion, to the north along the sandy coasts of the sea, preferred to refer to the old wooden pile of a roadside inn that lay along the southern coast road out of fair Indolene, brightest of their shining coveted jewels, and heading off south towards Cirith Isildur and the port districts that surrounded the Dark Tower down there, often called the City of Ghosts by all. in nothing more than a hushed whisper, as though to ward off some curse. They preferred to refer to the ancient inn as the Little's place by the side of the road. And then they too, of course, made their ornate gestures to ward off some evil spirits, as was custom when talking about anything lesser than themselves, which was, to be honest, most things and folk, as far as the fair elves were concerned. Such is the way of the haughty and noble Endar. The forgotten lands that lay between Cirith Isildur and Indolene were considered provincial by those same Indar. Rolling hills and a long valley gave way to the coast, and its small line of hills protecting the farms from the salt-laden blasting winds and the mists of the seas. Beyond the district where the inn lay was a small distant mountain range to the east, occupied by small farms found fewer and farther between. And among these were found the occasional villages and hamlets of the Littles, or so the Indari had named those smaller folk, the Littles. These smaller people had their own name for themselves, but the haughty Indari elves seldom cared for anyone else's language or words but their own. Of course, everyone knows this. In recent years, camps of reckless adventurers who'd long turned to banditry waited alongside the crumbling roads and small, quiet canyons and hills where perhaps the remains of some ancient tower sleepily watched the dusty scape and the distant Barrow Hills. It was said that darker forces walked the canyons and dry hills where the ancient burials lay farther east, during the longer nights of winter itself, and even along the outskirts of some of these Little's villages, farther out than they should have been, tending their olive orchards and keeping watch during the quiet, hot days, and shut up and in during the moonlight nights, when one might hear things it was best not to investigate. But again, those were always the tales told in the hinterlands and around the great hearth of the old inn, away from the high precincts and bright jewels of fair coastal Indolene, where only important matters of state and great magic were ever discussed, among rising and slender white towers adorned with pennants fluttering in the breeze. No tales of ghosts or lost hoard were ever spoken of among the beautiful elven ladies and their lords adorned in high, shining and bright ceremonial armor. Such talk was crude and boorish, for the Indar only dreamt of a misty future that somehow matched the glorious lost past of those elves who cast their gaze from their tall sculpted towers and watched the storms of the sea come and pass them by. And never did they turn their gaze south, beyond the great river of the south, the Sir Morna, for that too was greatly considered uncouth to discuss, even though it was in quiet tones and often discussed. The great river of the south, the Black River, or as it was sometimes known, the Nuru Harin, the Death Shadow. One early evening, it was into this very ancient inn old Malrond himself, who some said was an emissary of the Emerald Council, came on a late afternoon spring day. Many of the Littles in the district had seen him crossing over and through their green fields, even just now blossoming with wildflowers and first sprouting, walking along the quiet and forgotten roads that led from one stead to another with his tall and sculpted staff, stopping for a pleasant bit of talk with many of the older Littles he'd known in the long ago days, and some who were rumored to have once, on occasion, gone off a-wanderin' with Malrond himself, as they say down in those pastoral districts. And so, by later afternoon tea, which is when the Littles have finished their heavy work for the day and are ready for their second tea before turning to the business of cleaning affairs up, news had spread that Malrond himself was indeed around, whether you've been expecting that to happen or not today of all days, don't you know? Many of the littles were settling down to either their honey cakes or even the heavy lavender scones with baked crumble topping for second tea, when they heard the news regarding Malrond, as teams of small little boys, wild and screaming, raced from farm to farm to spread the tale of the tall wizard's arrival in the district. The Littles are well known for those fantastic scones. Some say even Glorindal, one hand, ruler of the Andari, occupant of the Emerald Lion throne, which rests atop Indoline's seventh hill, favored them greatly and had carts of them brought up from the districts by the elven horse themselves. It was over these matters, and Malron himself specifically, the Littles discussed news of Malron's arrival, and that it was clear he was heading toward the old inn and would arrive there toward day's end. So, of course, with little organization and much frenzy, littles from all across the district found an excuse to be about some business regarding the inn, and came in from their farms as the spring sky began to settle toward its gloaming to hear what the old wizard had to say, for he always had something interesting to say. Now, let us discuss the inn, which the littles, who favored the likeness of the children of men more than elves, began to stuff themselves into as night came on, and the inn was made merry and hot by the hearth and many a candle. As has been said, the inn was very old, in fact. Some say, which is a common phrase in almost everything the littles speak upon, a sort of benediction, as it were, before engaging in the gossip they so love, or an absolution if you prefer. Some say the old inn was as old as Indoline itself. But who knows such nonsense things? Back to the inn itself. It was a beautiful old pile of rambling rooms and deep cellars. The beer which the inn was famous for, a dark brew they served cold and called Bach, came from a creamy head of foam and a slightly bitter aftertaste that filled the stomach right with just a sip, leaving a satisfied feeling and a pleasant warm afterglow. It was the opposite of the heady pilts brought down from the eastern mountains, direct from the ruined halls of rock dwarves who still delved into the remains of their vast and lost empire. Pilts was, by most, considered only barely brewed and far too potent for polite conversation, which is what the Littles prided themselves on when having a Bach. The inn was also known for its coastal cheddar, the locals called onion shop, and travelers often remarked they'd never had anything of its like. It was into the main room, all girded and floored in perfectly polished red oak, with a roaring fire built within the massive hearth, that pints of beer were hoisted, two-handed of course by the Littles, and plates of that sharp onion cheese with crusts of the local sourdough were set out. By the time Malron got around to showing up, it was full dark, and the Littles had been about their gossip to the point that they had worked themselves up into quite a tither regarding exactly what this was all about. Of course, the news had to be about the South and the war there, for no doubt it was war. That had been brewing beyond Cirith Azaldor, of course. It was about the shadow hordes and rumors of who was behind all the dark things and dire omens. Of course, it must be about all these things. And then again, some say it could be about the North. Might it be about the children of men, the savage tribes forming up in the cold reaches of the lands there where the days were short and forests stretched off to the end of the world, or so some say, where the mountains were jagged and cruel, and the rivers were supposed to be filled with ice and roaring so hard that they would carry you off into a land of dangerous dragons? It might be about those things. Why, surely it must. This was the consensus all the Littles had arrived at before Malrond himself had even arrived and opened his mouth one bit. But there was dissent. Of course, said other littles, rowdy and young, and known to stick to the back, to share a good joke and perhaps a pipe. Of course, it's about the rock dwarfs in the eastern mountains. Of course, since there is to be war in the south, the dwarves will sense their chance to sweep down on the lands of the Indar and take back their stolen treasures and snatch jewels, back from the sack of Indolene if there is to be one. For the dwarves are a greedy lot, greedier than most, and what have they been plotting up there in Rahaza Ishgar, the ruins of their mighty and dark fortress, beneath the sheer stone face of old Karagdur? Why the dwarves did not aid the Indar, as the littles had at the Battle of Neverine Sands, was much discussed. And that was 100 years ago. Why, my old Deedah fought in there when he was a lad, erupted one blustery-faced little, waving his mug about as though it were some kind of torch in the darkness. One of the littles coughed politely but pointedly to indicate they didn't believe the teller's Deedah had indeed fought at that long-ago battle out in the sands that lay south and east beyond the mountains, when the Indar had gone off to save their cousins, the Andar, rulers of the lost kingdom of the Sand Elves, as they were commonly known, or Erume, as the elders and elves of Indolene would have named it. So there within the roasting and cheery inn, as the cold mists from off the sea rolled over the line of coastal hills and came to the pleasant farms of the littles, were all of those kinds of arguments regarding just exactly what Maldoron himself would say this night. Perhaps it was news of the Emerald Court, some greater affair, or a new law to make all their lives better, despite the burdens incurred in its offering. Or perhaps it was even about all those strange lights in the south a few nights ago, when the last of the winter storms had risen up out of the sea and smote the coast hard indeed. Hadn't they all felt the earth shake with titanic booms and deep thunders rolling out across the coastal hills like some giant out a walking? And of course, all those strange lights that colored the night sky. Many piped up and said there was no such thing as giants, but these were mainly young, and they failed to notice many of the quiet, older littles said nothing on this, and seemed merely content to watch the passing of absolutely certain talk with the merest of a bare chuckle or a grim stone face of knowledge and knowing. Truly, it had all been rather frightening, the storm a few nights back. But the littles were the type of people who, if they made it through the long night, were just as apt to forget the horrors of a toothache in the golden light of morning, and of course fresh cakes and a good pot of coffee. And so they had done away, mostly, with the rather unexplainable events of just a few nights prior. That was until Melrond himself had bothered by, and there must be something in that, for why else would he have come to the inn? As it has been said, it was all rather frightening, and by the time the bent and gaunt old man, or rather elf, ducked his head in and made his way into the inn, many of the littles were in a tither and upset, impatient to hear what was going to be said. But then Malron the Wise swept into the inn, tall and gaunt, as has been noted, his long grey beard a thing the littles always marveled, as they could not grow such features themselves, nor ever be so tall as the wizard. It was a testament to the inn's ancientness that Malron did not have to duck down much to enter as he did many other little dwellings. No, the inn had clearly first been built for taller peoples, taller than men, as elves were. And so, perhaps in the long ago before the rise of Indolene, perhaps then the elves had worked these very same fields in the once and long ago. Hadn't Farmer Copper, out in East Fields, once found an ancient stone turned up in the soil of an old field, all carved with the strange runes that looked like old Andar Elvish? Such things were always being found here and there across the district, or so some said. especially if you believed the things some said, which of course most little did. Gossip was their stock and trade here in the South, beyond the hubbub and glitter of the mighty elven capital that lay within the basin of a coastal plain, surrounded by the mountains and passes to both east and the north. Malron swept in his gray traveling cloak and dirty robes, heavy with dust off the road that had come up so quickly after the last of the winter storms. Fatty McFarlane, who saw over the inn, tried to bring a sterling silver tray of wine in a slender goblet, which was custom for all elves who passed this way, up to the old wizard, but a long bony hand adorned with rings of what surely must be power, waved the fat innkeeper away. "I'll have a draught of your bock, Fatty, if you don't mind, please," said the old wizard. "It does cure the curse of the dust one finds out there along the road in these early months." The wizard's voice was deep and rich, sonorous almost. Old, too, because the elves were old. The longest lived of all the known lands, as some like to say. "And perhaps some of your cured olives from the dry foothills way, Fatty? That is, if you have them yet, of course." Malron cast his glittering eyes over the crowd as he sat down near the fire, stamping his boots to shake the misty damp out of his old toes, and then immediately producing the slender, long-stemmed alabaster pipe elven wizards preferred. He set about packing it with their special blend, and then held it, unlit, until Fatty returned with a large mug of the bock and a plate of onion cheddar. A few spring onions and a scattering of cured black olives accompanied this. "Good!" cried Malron with delight, as he plucked at an olive after taking a long, deep drink of the bock, his showman's voice filling the room and startling all the littles at once. "You've brought me everything I've dreamed of along the road I've followed up out of the south. I just simply had to stop here along the way, though I do indeed tarry, for the Emerald Court expects me at dawn to deliver a report regarding events in the south." Then the old wizard set to drinking the beer, and snatching up a piece of cheese to nibble and consider, his eyes absent and far away on something for a long moment. "What's it all about?" asked Shane McPhee from out of the Sheepstead district, which wandered along the hills and dry canyons that led up into the foothills. Young Shane was never one to be patient, and so of course he'd been the first to badger the melancholy elven wizard regarding exactly what this was all about. But at least this was done with questions, and not his fast fists, as Tormik Wallows might attest to after events at the last Harvest Fest, when the two had come to blows and only Shane walked away with the hand of Darla McNoyle. Malron came to himself and seemed surprised he should find himself in a room full of littles, all eyes, eager, waiting with an almost urgent expectancy reserved for the direst of circumstances. "Well," intoned the old wizard as he selected another dry, cured black olive and popped the salty morsel into his mouth, "who says it's about anything in particular? Can't an old friend come in from the long winter and share fire and food and good smoke with his little friends?" A few remonstrated Shane from the shadows of the inn for being so hasty. Old Malron had sustained himself yet with the tray and mug. Be patient. Though a moment later these few didn't necessarily admit to the remonstrations, when fiery Shane cast a blazing glower over his back to see just who exactly had made such comments regarding his impetuousness. "Well, it's always about something, Malron, when you shows up," began Shane once again. "Something wonderful, and always. We comes to expect such when you shows up. And I ain't no Sally for saying such. You alls know it, don't ya?" Several of the littles agreed that they did indeed know it. Yes, the appearance of Malron, who always seemed to be coming direct from, or heading directly to the Emerald Court, was always a time of good tidings, and of course, the show of the telling. Because that's what this is really all about. If it had been simple gossip, well, that would make its way all over town by main lunch tomorrow. But what would have been missed would have been something that was truly special. The show of the telling. That's what wizards did. They didn't just tell you a story, they showed you one with magic. And here was one, Malrond himself, come obviously to show them something now. Malron's eyes were dark and shining as first he stared at little Shane McPhee, defiant and fiery. But yes, right. And for a moment the old wizard stared over the top of his crooked nose, his baleful dark eyes staring even into Shane, as some might have said later. And for a long moment, he didn't stop. Malron cast his dark, glittering eyes over them all. Everyone the next morning who was there would have told you that old Malron himself had stared straight at them. Not just all the littles, but them specifically. And there were others inside the old place that early evening, men of the road who always seemed to be about the business of trading, the clutch of sinister sand elves come in from their camps in the hills, a few others strangers who preferred the dark recesses of the bar and the shadows there, others too. Every one of them would have told you in that moment, as the telling of the show began, that old Malrond was looking at them, and them specifically, as he began his magic. And this is how he began, the old elf putting down his mug of Fatty McFarlane's finest, then taking up the unconsidered long stem pipe that had already been packed with his brand. And then, just like that, a blue flame appeared at the tip of his long and slender index finger, after he quietly made a small and simple snap with his thumb and crooked forefinger, like the soft break of deadfall eucalyptus in a quiet winter forest. Flame touched the bowl, and the wizard puffed his pipe to life, the room darker now, the shadows deeper. And then old Malron began the show of the telling.
And there it is. Chapter 1. All pinned up and done. What'd you think, Nick? Hello? Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Thought I lost you there for a second.
I was overrunning the chat for anybody who want. I actually figured out how to enable the comments.
Oh, good.
Jesse Haydenrick saved my bacon. He said, "Oh, if it's for children, you can't have. You can't. Thank you, Psalm 23:5 for the good accents emoji. You know, I try. I used to do a little acting back in the day after I got out of the military, and even before too. Sometime maybe ask me about how I was in the movie Teen Witch, which is kind of a cult classic, and that it's awful." And so I got the comments enabled, and
Awesome.
we were able just to. I was able to duck over to this and then watch the chat and actually talk to people. So that was fun. What I liked about this is I can actually listen to me and be like, "Gosh, you're horrible." And
I don't know. I'm kind of into it.
yeah, and then well, thank you. Well, our buddy Wilford Brimley. He says that this is very calming to him as he's been in hell. So, Wilford, we are glad to have you back from hell. James Totten, thank you, brother. Thank you. Glad you dug it. Walt, this is beautiful. This is like a wizard.
So I was like, we started with elf, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden he was bearded, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot.
Yeah.
So I gave him like a very elvish beard, so he doesn't have that big huge mustache. He's got that like Abe Lincoln, but it's cascading over him.
Well, he's an interesting person in that he seems to be an elf, but he has a beard. So I like it and it's fine for you. Yeah, I think it totally works. If people didn't detect, the littles are hobbits. We'll find out what their other name is, but the elves of this world, we've been at, like, obviously there's a little bit of world building going on. Try not to jam in too much. But we have three different types of elves that we've introduced, which are the Indar, which seem to be kind of the elves who are ruling everything. And then they're the Andar, which seem to be kind of desert elves. And I think we did mention in this one that there were some elves called the Eldar, and they're kind of the ancient elves, I guess we could say. James Bowling says, Walt, great sketch.
Oh, thanks, brother.
You're like the Medusa. You're gonna steal my show. This is gonna be the Walt sketching show, and everybody's like, yeah, enough of you and your made up Tolkien shit. Excuse me, language. Let's see. James Sutton says it was the shooting gravelly tone of the old ruck hobo that brought it all together. Thank you. Yeah, and when I do this Tolkien thing, because when I write military science fiction like Strange Company or Galaxy's Edge or Forgotten Ruin, I have a tendency to like that stuff's pretty high power. It's pretty like, go and stuff like that. And what I wanted to do with this is like dial it back a little bit and be a little more pastoral and calm. James Totten says, Walt, art in a clutch.
Right on, bro.
Man. Yeah. Well, Walt and I were kind of working up this idea, and we just thought, maybe people would enjoy this. People, there's nothing. It's not like there's anything good on TV lately, right? So
That's
I think
true.
people are tuning more to kind of finding their own entertainment, and that's what we're doing here. Punishment 90. What's up, boys? Thank you, boss.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Punishment 90.
Yeah. If you guys do, make sure you smash the like button and the subscribe, because we're going to be back next Tuesday doing this again with chapter 2. And as long as you want us to keep showing up, we will keep showing up. What were your first thoughts, Walt, when you heard this about 6-8 weeks ago?
I was very impressed, because you get so much where people want to just immediately like something has to die, but like the scope of using language to provide almost like a roadside haven or a place of comfort, and it kind of, what really hooked me was the fact that the what do you call it, the littles are into olives, and it reminded me of where my family's from in Italy. And you just sit there and you kind of get that like down home rustic feel, and there wasn't a rush. And this is what I really enjoyed about this. There wasn't a rush to immediately set something on fire. Instead, we are treated with the absolute opposite. There was almost this like reverence to enjoy just coming off the road. And that's what this chapter I really enjoyed about this chapter, was coming off the road and just absolutely like sitting down at a bar stool, and that feeling you get where like the pressure comes off of your feet and knees, and you just get that, like walking into your favorite restaurant, your favorite bar, walking in from work, and doing the what do you call it? Doing the thing where you kick your boots off. That's what this chapter really felt like, and it was very well executed.
Thank you. Yeah, olives are a big thing for me. Your family's from around Corsica and Sicily, I think, if I remember correctly, southern Mediterranean or middle of the Mediterranean.
Yeah, they're from a place called Catania.
Yes, and my passion in life is black olives, cured black
Really?
olives. Like, yeah, I love olive trees. Like, if I'm anywhere, I'll just start finding olive trees and staring at them. I love cured black olives. That's a really big thing for me. I eat a lot of them. I love olives, man. So of course, if I'm going to have hobbits, there's a lot of food in this, because, it's Tolkien, if you're going to have hobbits, you're going to have a lot of food. So, the start was, we got into the German word for beer, Bock, dark beer. I thought that was fun. The inn, like, yeah, coming into an inn like that, that's like well maintained and cheery and happy and everything like that. Like, that's what I mean. I think, sometimes people have likened Tolkien to a travel log, and I definitely wanted to dive in on that part of it. And so, we all like traveling. We all like the vistas, the deep woods, the mountains, the statues, everything like that. But part of traveling too is getting to quote unquote an inn, and hopefully it's a friendly place. Like, it's fun when you go to places where people want you there and
Yes.
treat you great, and the food's worth it, as opposed to places where you go and they hate your guts already, and you kind of got to overcome this wall of dislike for them to go, you're okay. And the littles are not like that. They're super polite people. They're kind of closed off society, but they definitely pride themselves on their hospitality. So, Malrond, who's maybe our Gandalf stand-in, maybe something else. He comes in and he gets a cold beer. He gets some cheese. He gets some olives. Like, that would make me happy.
You're not wrong.
No.
Oh my god! Just once, I would like to walk into some place and have that like gunfighter moment where the entire place goes quiet, and then all of a sudden, no, everybody in the place, I don't know a single person. They just all start cheering that I'm there.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be so awesome.
I used to say a lot of the time. I used to say, "What did you just scream out?" Oh, I see.
Like,
The
yeah,
video,
like,
the video was
yay.
a little late. Okay, yeah. I used to say, like, for once in my life, I would like somebody to be excited about making my coffee. Like, sometimes I'll meet this guy who's like a coffee, you know, uh, cultist, and they're really into it. And then that's the guy. Like, most people, when they make your coffee, they're kind of like, whatever. But I love finding people who are craftsmen. Punishment 90 says his family is from Tyrol.
Oh,
He
really?
also says, I've always tried to express that moment of relief after an adventure in tabletop games. The moment players enter an inn exhausted and beaten on. Carousel and after adventure moments were also incredibly important in certain social genres, as well as Robert E. Howard. He used that a lot. Um, Wilford Brimley tells you, Walt, be careful what you wish for on that gunfighter moment. Yeah, like, the Conan feasting moments were always great, and that they kind of came at the very beginning, where to explain why Conan needed to get involved in something because he drank himself silly, and was broke, or he's going to ride off with the tavern girl and everybody's money and everything like that. So, yeah, I dug those. I love the concept of adventures survive. Like, one of my favorite pictures when you're first a little guy and you're staring at, I think it's the player's handbook, or yeah, it's probably in the player's handbook, and you're imagining an actual adventure you're going to go to, and instead of getting murdered by the DM solicitously.
A bunch of hobgoblins.
And there was always that picture where they're all standing around the oaken table in the inn, divvying up everything. And there's like a wand, there's a sword, there's a shield, there's some gems, bag of gold. And like, that's the cool moment. Like, I think like, in one project that hasn't been really released yet, I kind of wrote about that moment and everything like that. I always dug, like you actually get to divvy up the fun. What usually happens is, people just start snatching and grabbing everything for themselves, and then some sort of on-site bargaining takes place. Because I think originally D&D intended that, like, you couldn't necessarily put the magic items or treasure that you had gotten to use until you got back to the inn and kind of figured it out. But then sort of modern video gaming and boss unlocks and everything like that had it where, you had to, if you're going to get the Stellar Star Sword of Ultimate Destruction, well, that's because there's a dragon in the next room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a boner. Anyone who has enthusiasm for what they do is refreshing and contagious. Amen to that. Give me desire over ability anytime, because the desire will take you there. I've seen a lot of really, like, soul dead, talentless people, especially like in Hollywood, sometimes the military, sometimes some other things that I've done in my life, and people who are just naturally gifted and everything like that. But they just didn't, they didn't love it. You know what I mean? They didn't. But then you'd meet somebody who maybe wasn't. Walt and I were talking about that, about patrolling in the woods and stuff like that. And you would always, like, when you're in the army and you go out and do that kind of stuff, you're intimately aware of your failures and over adequately aware of, like, the guy who just moves without a sound, or, just
Oh,
knows all
great.
the skills, just can just tie knots, and you're like, okay, how does this go, and stuff like that. And so, but the guy who wants to be out there, the guy who's excited about that, and everything like that. There's a guy that we play games with that's a veteran and everything like that. And in a lot of ways, his name's J.R. Handley. He's also a science fiction author. He is the epitome of just, like, enthusiasm and excitement for something. And I'll always take that guy over, the soul dead pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that. So now you've got the little in there. This is Fatty.
Yeah, he's trying to offer that drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now Ron's like, no, I don't want it. And the other guy's
No.
like, oh my goodness.
Tell us a little bit about your art background.
So you grew up as a kid, and language being an obstacle for me as a young man. It wasn't an obstacle. I could usually look at something and reproduce what I see. And I stopped looking up at the thing, so it's not exactly turning out how it appears over there. But yeah. So I got into art, and then kept doing it when I was in the Army as something to do while I was not actively engaged in my job. So when we had some downtime, I would grab a pencil, and usually, if you managed to get back to wherever it is you were, as far as, like, the command and control cell, there was usually either copy paper or somebody had a notebook or something like that. And I always had a pencil on me, because my boss at the time was like, there are 3 rules for things you must carry with you at all times: something to write with, something to cut with, and something to make a fire. So I always had.
I bet I know the name of that boss.
Yeah, well, he's kind of famous on the Forgotten Ruins set.
He's famous. Yes.
It's funny because Punishment 90. We have talked to him several times. He just hit me up with a side message. He's like, well, no, it's actually Punishment M249, that gentleman we were talking about earlier. He's like, what is the likelihood that we may or could possibly meet Joe? So if you want to meet Joe, the best thing would be to let me know. We will put together a hunting trip, and you can go sit in the freezing cold mountains in a deer stand, and you can talk to him all you want. He's probably not going to say anything, because he's probably contemplating throwing you out the stand because you're making too much noise, scaring away the dinner.
Yeah.
But like, he's kind of weird. He gets all excited that everybody likes the portrayal of him.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's like, freaking geeks.
Well, I mean, it's a tough thing to deal with, being sort of, I don't know that it's Tuckerized, but becoming a character in a novel and things like that for a lot of people, because it's not, and we did ambush him with it. I don't think he expected it or anything like that. But I think that the character was so, I think that's the character that everybody's looking for in their life. Somebody who knows what they're doing, is willing to upgrade you as long as you're willing to be upgraded, but and it may not even be that. It may just be that guy has wisdom, and wisdom, like, especially right now, is in such short supply. When you look at the great movies or the great books, it usually is this wisdom stuff. And I've spent my life kind of just going around collecting it, because I realized early on I was pretty stupid. and
Come on.
I was gonna need like every edge I could. So like I memorized a lot of wisdom throughout my life just because it was easier than learning it the hard way. And Joe's that guy who's like he's a font at as he was related to me at what he had to offer in the profession of arms, specifically being a ranger. And so I think people really dug that. I think let's see, jump over to the Sparky showed up. Arg, I'm late. Was chasing dogs through the woods. That's unacceptable, Sparky. No one cares about that. Those dogs are running you, man. You're not running those dogs. What's up?
He's got a neighbor that whose dog doesn't respect the fence.
Okay. All right. I'll cut you a break. Bowling says, sounds like a good hunt. Sparky says, sitting in the cold with the cool dude saying nothing. That's what men do. I'm down. Yep. You understand it. That's exactly. I think what Joe would do is he would place you somewhere and make you think that you're going to have an afternoon together, and then he would leave you. And it would get dark and you would get afraid. Then he'd probably go and just sit and read the Forgotten Road novels that I've heard.
It's funny because like his wife is, and we've talked about this before. He doesn't want to be like the object of like some geeky endeavor, but then he'll come to they have this big center island in their kitchen, and he'll come to them and be like, you guys ready for school? Yeah, good. Did you know I'm in a book now? Just throws it into everywhere. I'm like, bro, that means you need to come in the show. I ain't doing that.
Yeah. See, now I'm a little worried because if I do something he doesn't like, like I'm not saying it, but if I make him gay.
Well, you did make him, you did, and it was funny because it was a joke around the house for a while because his kids have learned or are learning Spanish in school.
Yeah.
And you made him Hispanic.
Oh, that's right.
And he's like, and it's always centered around like the kitchen with him. Like he'll come in and be like, did you know I'm spicy? and his wife just rolls her eyes and walks away. But then his kids try talking to him in Spanish, and they're like, "Hey, Sergeant Hernandez," and blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Yeah, you guys suck," and he just walks away.
I like that. What I think that Joe should do is he should embrace this, and he should offer like weekend hangouts. And you come down there, and people pay money. $500, $3,000, and there's a shoot. There's some stalking training, and then there's a campfire, and you just sit around and download the wisdom. And then that's it. And you go home, and Joe collects like $50,000.
He'd be happy about the $50,000 part.
Yeah, well, that's Joe. You got to put yourself out there, man. No one's just going to give you $50,000.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat, that's for sure.
Alan Singer says people would pay money for a PT beatdown. That's true. I
got you, Huckleberry. Let's do this.
I pay a guy to CrossFit the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I did awesome. It today. It was great. And then I went and got omakase sushi, and which I'm just like, it's just pure protein from the sea. And it was outstanding. Now I'm going to have a homemade pizza and a salad.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
I'm pretty excited. This is Sparky says, I'm famous now. I'm in a book. I don't have to talk to you. Low Pro says it's a lot more fun learning Spanish at the block party than in the school. Truly,
you are
yeah.
Correct.
Like, yeah, you who cares if Doña Fernandez is going to the biblioteca on her bicicleta? That is beautiful. I love that, and that totally looks like a little, just like that guy, fatty, rosy face, needs some good PT.
Right.
Elves,
got his apron on.
Never trust elves. Never trust them. Look at this guy. I love it. This is very cool. This is a good sketch. I like it, Walt.
Not bad. I could do a little bit better if I was in my office over there.
Mhm.
I have a drafting board.
Yes.
So, and it what do you call it? It adjusts up or down. So I could what do you call it? If I could get the camera over there, that would be cool. But only one camera would be over there. It would just be a mess.
Yes.
So, but yeah,
Hey.
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
One last comment here. Joe should market his wife's turkey.
Oh my god, that stuff is so amazing. Because like she'll take like big hunks of it, and she'll totally go out and and you know, dry, cure, salt, like everything, and you know, some time goes by, but when she unveils it and you get it, it's like, oh my god, because it's not tough, right? I mean, it tastes like jerky and it's rigid, but it's not so tough that you think you're going to break a tooth biting into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're still getting a little bit of the steak factor.
Yeah, it's just, oh my god, she makes them. It was awesome. We'd have that venison jerky, and everybody would be like pulling out Slim Jims from their ammo packs and stuff, and you're just like,
that's a great way to never use the restroom again. A Slim Jim. Alan Singer asked me, Nick, Beretta 13.0, what's your opinion? If you can find a 1301, I would buy it. I think it's the best combat shotgun on the market, and it's amazing. It's a lethal weapon. I mean, all weapons are lethal, but the 1301 is a pro level shotgun if you got to get stuff done.
My little bro has been on the hunt for a Benelli M4.
Yeah. Tell him to look at the Beretta 1301. And what's amazing is we can have it in California.
Oh, nice.
Which is, oh, yeah. Yeah. I almost bought one about a month ago.
What held you up?
You want to know honestly?
Sure.
Okay, no, lie to me. It wasn't all black. I think it was
I mean, that's a thing.
Yeah, it was the 1301 Marine model. So the
so
receiver, the receiver was chrome. The barrel was black. The stock was black, and I'm like, no, this is gay. So I put it down. But it'll come to me. I will be happy. Everybody said we should do this again, so we will do it again. We will wrap it up now. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Continue to ask questions in the chat. I'll check in later, and we can do this. We will be back next Tuesday, same time, to do another picture, and maybe we can do like a war picture, because that's the showing of the tell when Malron tells about the Dark Tower and the battle and the dragon. And I thought that was a pretty fun chapter.
Hell yeah. Let's
do
it.
Peace out. Thank you for